You know what's smart? Enjoying a fresh gourmet meal at home that you didn't have to cook. Meet Factor, your loophole in the laws of mealtime. Chef-crafted meals delivered with a tap, ready in just 2 minutes. You know what's even smarter? Treating yourself without cheating your goals. Factor is dietitian approved, chef prepared, and you plated. Pretty smart, huh? Refresh your routine and eat smart with Factor. Learn more at factormeals.com.
This is the Michael K. Show podcast.
I gotta get more K.
Listen live weekdays at 1 on 880 ESPN, the ESPN New York app, and your smart speaker.
And a good afternoon, everybody. This is indeed the Michael K. Show. We thank you for joining us on this Tuesday, a really chilly Tuesday, January 7th, 2025. I'm a year behind. Hope everybody's doing well. There's so much to talk about. And there is one positive aspect. And if you've listened to me over the 22 years that I've been on the station, there's one positive aspect of the show not being simulcast. And just one. And that is that as I speak to you right now, I'm doing the show nude. Because really, there's no cameras. There's nobody's looking at me. It's a radio show. So my voice stays the same whether I have clothes on or not. I've always been a big advocate of if it's a big game, then you take your clothes off and watch the game in the nude. Now, if you were doing that for the Knicks game yesterday, not too good. They lost their third straight game, and it was a 103-94 loss to the Magic, an injury-ravaged Magic team that had played the night before and had not been at the top of its game. So it's weird the way the ebb and flow of our emotions go with the New York Knicks. Because when they had gone into Oklahoma City riding that winning streak, we thought, wow, the sky was the limit. And for the first half of that game, they were great. They went into their locker room at the half, and they were leading the Thunder, who also had a long winning streak. And then it kind of fell apart really in the fourth quarter of that game. Then they lost in Chicago, the second game of a back-to-back. And now they're on a run. Yesterday started a run where they play a lot of games at home. And that's usually where you want to get fat. But it might not be the case for this upcoming run for the Knicks. And the reason why is that you're looking at a situation where they start to play really, really, really good teams. So Orlando is a game that you should have. Then they play again tomorrow against Toronto. Now, take them lightly at your own risk, but that's a game that you should win. Then Oklahoma City comes into town on Friday, Milwaukee on Saturday, then Detroit on Monday, and Detroit's better than last year's Detroit. Then they go to Philly on the 15th. Then Minnesota comes to town on the 17th. Atlanta on the 20th. Then they go to Brooklyn on the 21st. And on and on and on we go. So there's a long stretch where they could actually sleep in their own bed, but they're tough teams. So, yeah, you weigh that with the fact that it's better to be playing at the Garden, but the Knicks also dominated on the road. And before last night's game, I think they were tied for the most games played on the road, and they had played very well on the road. But they got fat in December. And the reason they got fat in December is they played bad teams. And the Knicks are a good team. But now the old narrative is going to kick up. I can hear it. I see it on social media today. Well, you know what? He doesn't play his bench. His guys are exhausted. I mean, relax. First of all, he doesn't have a great bench. They had to give away the bench to make the moves that they made. So they've got to build up another bench. And Thibodeau, obviously, is a guy who's reluctant to use the bench anyway. So what do you want him to do? Do you want him to play Tyler Kolek? Is that going to change things for you? I think he's doing everything just fine. And I know what people are going to say. If you don't use your bench now, the team's going to be exhausted in the postseason. That's not why the Knicks lost last year. The Knicks lost last year because OG Anunoby got hurt. Everybody was injured. That's why they lost last year. That's why they didn't move to the conference finals. Not because they were overplayed. This is what Tibbs does. Either you accept it or you don't. And I think that the reason why they won as many games in December as they did was because he puts the pedal to the metal and he plays everybody. And here's a dirty little secret, everybody. One of his top guys off the bench was injured, didn't play. And then probably the best player on the team injured his knee in the Chicago game, and he didn't play. So that's why they lost the way they did to the Magic. And they also looked a little bit tired. Now you can say, well, there you go, Michael. You're just obviously refuting what you're saying. Well, if they're tired, well, it's because he plays them too much. No, they're tired because that's the grind of an NBA season. These guys are built to play a lot, and that's one of the strengths of this team. It just is. So if you take away that strength, you're taking away a reason why they dominated and had such a great record in December. Let it breathe. Don't go nuts because of a 3-game losing streak. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. They're a good team. Their starting 5 is great. They've got a team that could win a championship. And you've got to trust Tibbs to do the right thing. You hire a coach like Tibbs, he's always going to play his starters a lot. And if you're a Knick fan, you're complaining about the fact that he's not going 10 deep on his bench. He never would anyway. He's never going to be a 10 deep guy. He's just not. He's just not. But then you love the fact that when you go to Madison Square Garden and you pay all those prices to get into the place, that you actually know that Jalen Brunson's going to play. Karl Anthony Towns, barring an injury, is going to play. Not going to be a load management. Isn't that a good thing? Isn't that a thing that you should celebrate? So, I mean, it seems like fan bases are caught betwixt and between. Well, what do we want to do here? Do we want a team that plays 82 games a year? Or do we want Kawhi Leonard? Well, what do you want? I'll take a team that plays 82 games a year. I think the more you play, the bigger stamina that you build up. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Prove to me that they didn't go to the conference finals last year because of exhaustion. Prove to me. I don't think you can. They didn't play well yesterday. Now, we also heard, and this bothers me, well, the energy wasn't there. And I love the fact that Josh Hart said, that's nonsense. We got outplayed. Don't give me the energy nonsense. I think that's a ready-made excuse for why you don't play well. Because you're not going to say they're better than us, because the Magic aren't better, especially without the Wagners and without Banchero. They're not better. So you got to look at it and say, you know what? I'm going to accept this. I'm going to ride with it. And at the end, they're going to be one of the top 4 teams in the East. Right now, they are right behind the Celtics. 2.5 games behind the Celtics. So the Celtics are 26-10, and the Knicks are 24-13. Now, did we really at any point think the Knicks were going to play at the pace that they played in December? It's impossible. You know who does that? The Warriors when they won 73 games. The Bulls when they won 72. Twice in a lifetime teams. Don't expect that. That's not this team. That's not this league anymore. I don't doubt. I trust the process with the Knicks. Everything that Leon Rose has done and everything that Tibbs has done has been touched by gold. Everything. The Cat trade. The Bridges trade. I love the way it's been talked about because it's true. They gave up 5 guys that are playing in high school right now for Mikal Bridges. 5 draft picks of guys that are playing in high school right now. Lottery tickets for Bridges. They shocked everybody by getting Brunson. They shocked everybody with the player that Hart has become. They're good. They're good. They don't miss Randall. They don't miss DiVincenzo. The only thing they miss with DiVincenzo is that when everything's right and everybody's healthy, they'd have a little bit of a different bench. Because when the team was first conceived, Josh Hart was supposed to be coming off the bench too. They'll work it out. They've got enough talent on the bench. They're good. Trust me, trust them. 1-800-919-3776. 1-800-919-3776. Give us a call. Now, we're excited about our first guest today because I was wondering last night, How do you go 22 years where you've worked with a partner or partners, in my case, Don and Peter, to doing a show by yourself? Now, obviously, I did shows by myself during that run where Don and Peter were on vacation because for some reason, the Pinhead Suits trusted me to do the show alone, but not Don and Peter when they should have. So when I was off or Peter was off, they wouldn't let Don go alone. They were afraid he would crash the vehicle. They were wrong. He would have been brilliant as he always is. But now I'm going into this brave new world where for 2 hours a day, you're going to hear me. So how do you handle that? How do you handle that after all this time of working with somebody, leaning on somebody, depending on somebody, relying on somebody, and then yesterday was all taken away, gone, over. Now I'm a lone wolf, solo K. And I said, who should I talk to for advice on how to do that? And I said to myself, what a wonderful world. Chris Russo's the guy to talk to. Mad Dog. He worked all those years with Mike and then left to go to SiriusXM and did a show alone and did a 5-hour show alone and has been doing it. I said, I got to get Chris on the phone. So I texted him last night. I love you, Mikey. So he's going to join us at 1:30. How about that? Now, I thought about maybe I should also get Mike on the air. But then I realized, well, Mike probably would say no and probably doesn't like me that much. So that didn't happen. So I just texted Chris, and he seemed like he was thrilled to come on. So 1:30 with Chris, and we're looking forward to that. We also have a brand new segment. Yesterday, we debuted Hit and Run. And it really landed with great reviews. People love it. They're talking about it in the streets. I was out in my town yesterday. People were high-fiving me. Great segment. Unbelievable. We love it. We love it. It was that kind of a reception. So that kind of made me proud. And I said, let's come up with another segment. And today, we're going to come up with Debunk the Junk. What? Which I think is important in today's age because I'm one of the people that don't believe that you should let falsehoods grow and prosper on social media without rebutting them or debunking them, so to speak. And I'm going to do that from time to time. So there's a couple of things that have been out there the last couple of days, and I said, let's get together a nice little in-bump, which we call in the business. That's business talk. And let's have a nice segment called Debunk the Junk. You're going to love it. And we got a lot of hit and runs today as well. We want to take your phone calls. We want to start right now at 1-800-919-3776. So a lot of things to do, starting with Chris Russo, Mad Dog Russo, at 1:30. Now, before we get to your calls, I want to, I gave a lot of thought, and I was listening to DiPietro and Rothenberg this morning as well, about John Mara's comments yesterday. And the more I think about it, the more I think that he did not handle it the right way. And I'm not talking about handling it in terms of keeping them, because, again, I didn't have a problem per se with keeping them. The problem that I had, and I articulated that yesterday, is that you want to know that they're going to be around a while. And I don't think that Mara, at any point when he was talking to the assembled media yesterday, gave you the feel that he had total trust in Shane and Dable. He wasn't overwhelmingly effusive. He said his patience is running thin. He actually admitted that the talent on this roster is not better than when those two guys came here. And he said, I want to see results. Well, that's not the thing to do. That wasn't the way to roll. Because if you do it that way, then if they start off 0-2 next year, they're going to be flying planes over MetLife. They're going to be calling for these guys' heads. And what did you do? You just extended the misery for a year. I keep reading today, well, he doesn't have the stomach for another job search of a GM and a coach. Well, I'm sorry, that's your job. You own a team, you better have the stomach for it. You better have the stomach for it. It just doesn't make sense to me. Either you give them a huge vote of confidence, and the thing that he could have said yesterday was this. You know what? I know the fans are upset. I'm upset as well. But I believe in these two men. We are with them. We are behind them moving forward. There's no timetable. We think these are the guys that are going to get it done. Now, you know what? You could say that. You could actually say that to the public and engender some faith and confidence. And then when you're behind closed doors, you go, oh, these guys stink. They better do it quick or I'm firing them next year. That's okay. But if you really do feel like that, then you should have fired them. But if you do believe in them, then articulate it and say, I believe in these guys and they are our guys moving forward. Because what did you do? You didn't belly flop into the pool. You dipped a toe. Oh, we're going to keep him another year. We'll see. And maybe Brian Dable shouldn't be calling plays. I didn't like the way the defense played. And the fact that the talent isn't as good as it was when they took over 3 years. I mean, imagine that. So what are you hanging your hat on with Joe Shane? That he had a good draft this year? Well, he had a terrible draft the year before. And he's one of the few people in the history of the world that actually selected somebody from Alabama that can't play with the 7th pick of the draft in Evan Neal. So that doesn't really engender that much confidence. I just thought that his meeting with the media yesterday kind of left me empty. And also there's a good follow, a big Giant fan that does not like that they kept him. And I didn't write down the name of the follow, but I did write down some of the stuff that they said. And they dug deep into Brian Dable. See, he was the offensive coordinator with the Browns in 2009, and they finished 29th in offense. He did the same job with them in 2010. They finished 31st in offense. Then he moved on to Miami in the same role. 2011, they were 20th. Not awful, but lower half. 2012, Kansas City finished last, 32nd. Then in 22, as the head coach of the Giants, they were 20th. 23, they were 30th. And this year, they were 31st. So that does beg the question. And I'm a Brian Dable fan, but I'm just giving you the facts. Did Brian Dable make Josh Allen, or did Josh Allen make Brian Dable? That is a big delineation, because if it's Josh Allen making Brian Dable, then you're hanging your hat on a guy that might not be as great as we assume that he is because of how great Josh Allen is. That is a conundrum for the Giants, because think about this. Brian Dable had 3 years to work with Daniel Jones, a former first-round draft pick, 6th pick in the draft. 3 years. Did Jones get any better? The first year, they said, well, he did win a play. Look at his numbers. They weren't that great. He didn't get any better. Then he had the injury. And then this year, he was awful to the point that they released him. So where was the magic touch? That's a key. That's something we have to keep a close eye on. And as far as the Jets, Rex Ryan is interviewing today with Woody and Chris and the gang. I find this to be a fascinating thing to think about, that Rex Ryan would come back. Yesterday on DPHO and Rothenberg, they said, no, they were interviewing him, and he said he's definitely going to get the job. If he gets the job, I'd be stunned. Because what you're doing is you're becoming a revisionist historian. His first 2 years with the Jets, mostly a roster built by Mangini. He went to the conference finals. Everybody celebrates that, and they should. But one of the times going to the conference finals, the Colts pulled all of their starters up the field in the last game and gave the game to the Jets. Otherwise, Jets wouldn't have made the playoffs. And then the last 4 years weren't good. Now, I believe that he was submarined by having Idzik as the GM who didn't like him. I'll give him that. But then immediately got a job in Buffalo and lasted 2 years and was fired. And hasn't coached since. And now I keep hearing from people, well, he's learned his lesson. How do we know? The best thing that he said publicly, other than like really being thirsty for this job, is that the Rodgers Country Club would be over if he took over. And I think that was Saleh's biggest mistake. I always said, if you're going to bend over backwards for Aaron Rodgers and it doesn't work out, you're going to lose your job. And that's exactly what happened to Robert Saleh. Letting Aaron Rodgers go to that Egyptian vacation and miss mandatory minicamp, that was the beginning of the end. The beginning of the end. And Rex said he wouldn't let that happen. I applaud him for that. But is he really the right guy for this job? And I keep hearing, well, if it's not him, it might be Aaron Glenn. Do you really want to bring in a defensive guy again? You just failed with one with Saleh. You really failed with one with Ulbrich. And you failed with offensive guys, too, in Gase. I get it. But you heard Steve Young yesterday on the show. The guys that work are the visionaries offensively. That see the field differently than everybody else, see the field differently than the defensive guys. So not only are you going to recycle Rex all these years later, but you're bringing in a defensive guy in an era of unprecedented offensive production. I would be stunned if he gets the job. I think it'd be great for us, everybody in the media, because he's a quota second. Quota second. But is that really the right move for the Jets? They can't do better than recycling Rex Ryan. He's not exactly Billy Martin. At least Billy Martin won a championship with the Yankees when they kept bringing him back. And by the way, continuing to bring back Billy Martin was a huge mistake. But he did have a track record. Now, Rex did very well with the Ravens as a coordinator. But as a head coach, what does he have? One of the championship games, they had a lead at the half, and they blew it. And then the other time they got in the playoffs, it was given to them. They would not have been in the playoffs. And then he didn't go for the last 4 years. So how? How is that the right move? I'm just saying. All right, let's take some phone calls, 1-800-919-3776. And we'll start with Tony in New York. Tony.
Hey, Michael K.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. You know something? My first time call.
Oh, thank you, man.
And I just wanted to say that I've always thought that you would have been great solo. One thing for sure, you straight talk. You know, you don't hem and haw. You don't beat around the bush. You call it straight like it is, without all of this fluff. And I respect you for that. I think you're a great host. And I am glad to see that you flying solo. You're going to be great.
Oh, man, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. And I'm glad that you're with us, and I hope you continue to listen. That is really, really nice to hear. I love it. And thank you for joining us for the first time today. Let's go to Jose in Brooklyn. Jose.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. Shout out to the company. Thank you for taking my call, and love the new time slot and the fact that you're kicking it solo. It's definitely a nice touch.
Thanks, man.
Anytime, man. I just wanted to definitely harp on it because I am one of those people that do remember the last 4 years of the Rex Ryan era. It wasn't just the first 2 years of the AFC championships where, yes, there was a lot of issues with John Izzik, but then there were like the hiring of the offensive coordinator with Tony Sperano and Marty Morningwig. And, it was just a huge mess at the end. And it's one of those things where I'm just like, I don't want to go down that road as a Jet fan, but I'll try to be optimistic. But the main reason that I kind of don't like this is because it does bring back the whole retreads of the coaches, where I do think like Aaron Glenn should be, given more of a popular, look at, even though he is a first-time defensive-minded coach.
It's interesting because I think if they go this route, Jose, it's Woody leaning on something that he feels comfortable with. And one of the positives with Rex is that he does know how to deal with Woody. So I think there's an affection there. But is that the right move for the future? Is it the right move for the future? I think it'd be a good move for the defense. And the defense was pretty good before Ulbrich became the head coach, and then the defense lost its way because he tried to do everything and he wasn't suited for it. But what would the offense be? It'd be great for Breece Hall, wouldn't it? Because Rex would just keep handing the ball off to Breece Hall. That's not football in 2025. You need dynamic offenses with dynamic quarterbacks. Speaking of coaches, the Post reporting, that Robert Saleh has had his first head coaching interview since being fired. He was interviewed for the Jaguars job. So there you go. I hope he gets a job because I think he was a good guy, and I believe the Jets would have been much better if they didn't fire him at 2-3. And boy, did that rankle me yesterday in that Brian Costello story in the Post where Woody said he has no regrets about firing him. Well, then you're clueless. You have no regrets about firing a guy 2-3 about to go into a game where they're playing for first place against the Bills, and then they completely collapse. But you have no regrets. Then you're not self-aware. You're not a smart football person. How could you have no regrets? Does that make any sense whatsoever? That's what worries me about Woody making this pick. And also Mike Tannenbaum was part of it as well, our colleague at ESPN, his consulting firm, and he does love Rex. Again, I would be flabbergasted if Rex got this job. I know he wants it. I know it's his dream, and, I want him to be happy. He seems like a good enough guy, but that would not be my top choice for the Jets. It wouldn't. Christopher Mad Dog Russo. Oh, yeah. He's going to join us in just a moment where I ask him straight out, how do you go on in life when you lose your partner? How do you do it? How difficult is it? Is it manageable? I think Chris has thrived, but we'll see. Maybe he has some advice that I never even considered. That's coming up on a big, big show. New segment, hit and run again. It's going to be great. More of your phone calls. It's the K Show right here on 880 ESPN.
What makes a great pair of glasses? At Warby Parker, it's all the invisible extras without the extra cost. Their designer quality frames start at $95, including prescription lenses, plus scratch-resistant, smudge-resistant, and anti-reflective coatings, and UV protection, and free adjustments for life. To find your next pair of glasses, sunglasses, or contact lenses, or to find the Warby Parker store nearest you, head over to warbyparker.com. That's warbyparker.com.
Grainger knows space at your facility is limited. As a maintenance specialist, you only have so many spots for backup products in your inventory roster, which means space on your bench comes at a premium. Well, when it comes to breadth and depth, Grainger's got you covered. They've got over 1 million industrial-grade products. Plus, fast delivery helps reduce the inventory you need to keep on hand, freeing up space and capital while giving your operation a winning edge. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by a local branch.
Harry Douglas here. Say goodbye to bulky, clunky shavers that clutter your bathroom. Not only do you get an incredible shave, Panasonic's Palm Razor has a sleek, elegant design that adds a touch of sophistication to your bathroom. It also conveniently charges with a USB cord. Visit shop.panasonic.com/sports to shop for the Palm Razor. Use promo code HARRY for 10% off exclusively for ESPN radio listeners. That's shop.panasonic.com/sports, promo code HARRY.
Thanks for listening to the Michael K. Show podcast.
He's been here a long time, and he's going to be here even longer.
Catch the show on demand whenever you want. Just subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to the Michael K. Show, everybody. Every Monday through Friday from 1 to 3, right here on 880 ESPN. I've been saying that, after 22 years of working with a partner and the last 9 years working with two partners, now doing a solo show, and there's only one other guy that I could think of that could give me advice on how this moves forward. And that is the Hall of Famer, Christopher Mad Dog Russo. You know him on Wednesdays on ESPN and then obviously on SiriusXM during the week. And he joins us now. Christopher, how you doing?
Mr. K, it is an absolute pleasure. How are you today, pal? Things good?
I'm doing great. And I'm just wondering, you worked all those years with Mike and then you started doing a show alone. Was it an adjustment for you? Is it going to be an adjustment for me with no Don and no Peter?
Absolutely. It is going to be an adjustment. You're going to need more calls because you got to have somebody to talk to. You're going to miss the camaraderie that you had with the two partners, as you said, for, was it how many years? 9 years with Peter?
9 years with Peter, yes. 22 with Don.
Yes, so, that is going to take a little something. That's going to bother you at times. I'm not going to dispute that. You're going to have to generate all the enthusiasm. Now, I did 5 hours.
I know.
And you're only doing 2. So I had to deal with 5 hours. And the other positive for you is you have a hometown team. I felt one of the big adjustments when I went over to Sirius from FAN was that I didn't have a hometown team. nobody in Walla Walla cares about if, Terry Collins pinch hit in the bottom of the 8th inning against the Nationals on May 10th. While, of course, on FAN, where you were, you could break that down for, basically for 5 hours and there's your show. You can't do that on a national deal. So I had that adjustment too. So I had no hometown team, and I had nobody to talk to at many a time. You have the hometown teams, but you lose 2 partners, not just one. So if one's having a bad day or not there, you still got somebody else. Now you don't have that. So it's going to be harder. Now, listen, nobody's throwing any, and we're not throwing anybody under the bus, but be fair, there's probably, I know I felt that way, there are probably days where you'd want to take your show in one direction and you couldn't because I had Mike, and you had Don and Pete. So as a result, you felt, I want to break down, pick a sport, Fordham basketball, but I can't do that today because, Don's into the hockey and Pete's into this, so I got to make sure we get everybody involved. You're not going to have to do that now. They think highly enough of you. You've been around for a very long time. I mean, think about it. You were on more than I was on with Mike. You've been on for a very long time, and you got a Yankee affiliation. You are going to be able to do anything you want now. This is now anything you want, you're going to be able to do. You want to put a book author on about Oppenheimer, go ahead, because it's your show, and they bent over backwards to make sure that they kept, because you had the Yankees and everything else, they bent over backwards to make sure that you were still part of the company and still doing shows, doing it from home and all those good things. You can do, I'm not trying to say you got to do sports, but you have carte blanche. This is now your tableau, and they have a lot of confidence in you to do anything you want. And that is very, when you're on with 2 other guys, you can't do that all the time. That is a very, it's a lot of responsibility, but, you're good. You got a good mind. You love to talk about a lot of things. You enjoy that. So there are pluses and there are minuses, to make a long story short.
So 5 hours, you must have been physically and mentally exhausted at the beginning doing 5 hours. And I'm wondering, at any point in that first year, did you regret leaving FAN and Mike? Yes.
Yeah.
You did?
I don't know so much about the first year. I would say probably a little later. The first year, a lot of, it was sort of a honeymoon period. I was getting to know everybody, the company and everything else. The new experience, going to all the games. I know I went to the NCAA championship game that year, Oklahoma and Miami and Florida, and college football. I went to the Cubs-Dodgers series when Torre was managing the Dodgers, and they blew out the Cubs. I was all over the place, so I enjoyed that. I think a little later in that 5 years, I realized, 2 to 7, Monday through Friday, Sirius XM, solo, this is hard. And I didn't probably realize that until a little later on in that first 5-year contract. And that's probably one of the reasons why I only did 3 hours. Remember, Mike, I only did 5 hours for the first 5 years.
Right.
So the last 11, I did whatever it is, 3. I did a couple years. I may have once in a while I do 4, but generally speaking, 3. And that's a huge, that's 40% less work. So that's a huge difference. Getting home at 7:30 instead of, I got the 7:19 train every night. I got home at 8:45. For 5 years, that's a lot. So it took me. I didn't realize how long 5 hours was on Sirius based on the fact there's no commercials. So I didn't quite realize that. I learned how to deal with it, and I'll tell you this, and the same thing goes to you in a different way. I'm a much, now you wouldn't know it because you're not listening all the time. I'm a much better talk show host now than I was 20 years ago. Now, I'm different because with Mike, we had to work together. We had to figure out how to move the show along and everything else. But as far as doing a show, figuring out how to get the audience involved, putting the guests in the right spot, doing a monologue, making sure that each hour is a pretty different hour, doing college football, those kinds of things, which you didn't have to do in New York that much college football. I learned how to do that and manage the show better. So although it's a different skill set with a partner, and we both had great partners, I had an all-timer, you had 2 excellent partners, When you're on your own and you do this, and you're going to do this every day now, every day, even with the Yankee games, right? Even with the Yankee games, you're still going to do the 2 hours? Okay. So you're going to do this every day. You're going to do roughly, 250 shows a year? Let's throw out a ballpark figure. I know you have a nice contact, but let's say 200 shows a year. That's a lot of talk radio. 200 shows, 2 hours a show. That's 400 hours of you talking. Generally speaking, solo. Michael Kay is going to become a better talk show host in a year and a half than you are right now. You might become a different one, maybe a little less of a director and a conductor, and a little bit more of a guy who, you're a point guard sometimes when you're working with a partner.
Yep.
You're going to be now, you're going to be Kareem now. The ball's going into you. Make the sky hooks. And you will become, and you're a good host anyway, you will become a better talk show host. So that's the way I felt after 4 or 5 years. And I promise you, if you stick with this and you have a bigger gig, you have as good a gig with the Yankees. So, you got to divide. I didn't have to divide any attention. My whole attention was the radio. You have 2 things, but you will become a better talk show host after this endeavor. I promise you. I promise you. You'll come back to me in 3 years and say, Chris, you were right. I'm a better host.
Talking with Mad Dog Russo right here on the Michael Kay Show. So let me get your take on a couple of things that's happening in New York while we have you. Did the Giants make the right decision keeping Shane and Dable?
Yeah, I think they did. And I love Mara. I think we all like Mara. I love the Wellington Mara group and John. But, the idea that he's running out of patience, I need to be in a better mood next year. John, a lot of this is your fault. You fired Coughlin. You hired Joe Judge. You got in and out of Shermer. You brought in Gettleman. You let him draft Daniel Jones. You fired Jerry Reese. Come on. A lot of this, John's making it sound like, I hire guys and they don't do the job, so don't blame me. No, he's a general manager. He's the owner of the team.
Yep.
He makes all the football decisions. So he's got, I love John, but his quote yesterday, I'm running out of patience. Well, John, we're running out of patience with you. This is a football family. The team's a disaster. But having said that, I don't think it's fair to blame Dable. Shane had a good draft scenario. They haven't had a quarterback. I think they got a break. I don't think these 2 quarterbacks are great. So I think not having a pressure to draft one is an advantage. And if they had the first or second pick, the whole world would have wanted to take Sanders or Cam Ward. So I think overall, I think John made the right call. I thought the tenor of his press conference, you know what? I'm with you, fans. I'm running out of patience, but I didn't want to go. We'll give him another year. John, we're giving you the time. You've been running this team now for a long time. Ever since you fired Coughlin, this has been, you had the 1 year at McAdoo, then it fell apart. This has been a disaster, and you're the owner. You take responsibility. Don't always throw it on the coaches and the GMs. That's what I would say. On the Jet side, today they're interviewing Rex Ryan. You think that's the way to go? I don't, but what's your thought? I don't either. I happen to agree with you wholeheartedly, and I like Rex. He's got a lot of personality, and he was much more successful here than he was given credit for. But I don't think you go back to Rex. I really don't. I got to start new. I got to find somebody, and nobody thinks Woody Johnson's the answer. So this is an incredibly big hire. I don't think Vrabel's coming here, and I think that's why Mayo was fired quickly, because I think Kraft doesn't want to lose Vrabel to the Jets. Absolutely. So I think at the end of the day, Vrabel will be in New England. But I don't think myself, and I don't want to knock Rex because I like Rex. We all like Rex. But I don't think, and Rex basically coming in, I wouldn't give Rodgers the time off. And a little too boisterous, for crying out loud. It wasn't like he was Weeb Eubanks. He ain't win a Super Bowl. So I wouldn't go in that direction. But I'd be worried about the Jets too. Would you bring back Rodgers? Status is, I would think about it. Where else you going? Where are you getting a quarterback? He's such a pain in the rear. Cousins. Where are you going to get a quarterback? You're going to have. You want Tyrod Taylor to be a QB? Is that what you want? You could do that, and then find a quarterback with what pick they have, 8th, 9th pick, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Listen, probably he's not going to come back. New regime will want to go in a different direction. He is 41 years of age. but he played well the other day. He had some good games. You can do a lot worse. I think he will play next year. So if they brought him back, I know nobody wants him back. They've had enough of him, and I understand that. He kind of wears out his welcome. But I understand it wouldn't be the worst thing. I don't think they will, Mike, but it wouldn't be the worst thing.
Yeah, I don't think it would be the worst thing either, but he's a load. I mean, especially for a new coach.
Oh, he's tough
you
to
need
handle.
a veteran guy. You can't bring in
handle.
a rookie coach and Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback. You can't.
That's a good point, too. And why isn't Ben Johnson being – well, they don't want to interview Ben Johnson? The guy's great from Detroit.
They said he doesn't fit what they're doing now. Well, why? He's great, so he doesn't fit?
The guy's a great coach. But every time you look up, they score 50 points. Well, and they're 14-2, 15-2. Last year they should have beaten the freaking Niners if, in fact, Campbell kicked a couple of field goals. I mean, gee whiz. What, he's unavailable? He doesn't fit him. He fits every other team. That, to me, they must think he doesn't want to come here. That's got to be it.
See, that's the homely guy that doesn't want to ask out the beautiful girl. They know they have no chance.
That's a good point, too. Well said. See, you're learning how to be a better talk show host already. That's a very, very good job.
Well, I know you got to get ready for work. I thank you for giving me this advice. You know how I feel about you, Chris, so thank you for popping on with me on the first week.
You'll be good, Mike. You're going to be a big host. You're going to be different. It's going to be different, and you're going to miss your buddies, and you're going to miss the camaraderie. I'm not denying that. But as far as you being a host in a year, I promise you, you're going to feel like you're better.
You're the best. Thank you, man.
Okay, buddy. You got it.
Be well. That's Chris Russo. Hear him on Sirius XM, and you'll see him tomorrow on First Take with Stephen A. Smith. He's always the Wednesday magician on that show, so a lot of stuff to do. Good advice by him. It was interesting. I never heard him say that he did regret it after the first year at Sirius XM, because if you think about it, I mean, I'm doing 2 hours, and it's not exactly heavy lifting, but, 2 hours alone, you could say, well, I'm probably talking more than I did with 3.5, 4 hours with two other guys, right? So it's interesting, but 5 hours alone. And back then, I don't know if he was getting a load of phone calls either on SiriusXM, and they didn't have commercials at the time, as he said. So maybe he was longing for Mike at that time. 1-800-919-3776. Interesting report regarding Pete Alonso and what Scott Boras' agent is looking for. I don't think it's realistic, but we'll talk about it when we get back right here on 880 ESPN.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Smith's for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Smith's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Thanks for listening to the Michael K. Show podcast.
He's been here a long time, and he's going to be here even longer.
Catch the show on demand whenever you want. Just subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts.
Tonight is Hockey Fights Cancer Night at MSG. The NHL and the V Foundation are teaming up to fight cancer across all NHL arenas, and tonight is the Garden's turn to step up. You can donate to the fight against cancer at hockeyfightscancer.com, and 100% of your donation goes directly to cancer research through the V Foundation. Now, to date, the V Foundation has awarded over $43 million, totaling 118 research grants for researchers within the state of New York, creating a profound impact on the research community, both within New York and far beyond. So join the NHL, the Players Association, and the V Foundation in the fight against cancer. Visit hockeyfightscancer.com to donate today. All right, so on SNY, and I also believe that Bob Nightingale of USA Today reporting this, that Scott Boras, the agent for Pete Alonso, is using Prince Fielder's previous 9-year, $214 million contract as a comp for what he's looking for with Pete Alonso. Now, if you've listened to me over the years, you know I have the utmost respect for Scott Boras. I wish I was half as smart as that guy. But sometimes there's realistic aspirations and then there's unrealistic. So there is no market as we speak for Pete Alonso. Maybe the Angels, maybe. Artie Moreno has been known to hand out dumb contracts. But you're looking at Prince Fielder's 9-year, $214, right? Pete Alonso on December 7th of this year turned 30. He's coming off a kind of benign year at 240 and didn't really have the type of year he wanted to have as a free agent. 34 home runs. He had a WAR of 2.6. Now, I think that Pete has always dreamed that he was going to get a contract like Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge had a WAR last year of over 10. Pete Alonso's a nice player and can hit home runs. But if Scott Boras thinks in any part of this world that he's going to get a 9-year deal for a 30-year-old first baseman who doesn't exactly have the type of body that you think is going to age beautifully, he's out of it. There's no way he's going to get a 9-year contract. I think the best chance for Pete Alonso is to re-sign with the Mets. Now, the Mets, before Alonso fired his agent to hire Boras, had offered a 7-year, $158 million deal. I don't think that's happening. That's not going to be on the table. And I keep hearing, well, he's a homegrown Met. The fans love him. So what? So what? So what that they love him? That doesn't mean you overpay for him. And I'm sure that Pete wants to stay with the Mets. But you've got to recalibrate your expectations. That money's not out there. Look at the contract that Freddie Freeman, who's a much better player than Pete. Look at what he signed with the Dodgers. First basemen don't get a lot of money for some reason. It's not a position where they are really going to flex and say, you know what, we're going to go beyond what we really feel comfortable with. There's rumors out there, we mentioned this yesterday as well, that the Mets had floated a 3-year, $90 million deal. And by the way, I think they're nuts for going that high. $30 million? Really? There isn't a first baseman that makes $30 million. If that offer ever existed by David Stearns and Steve Cohen, and Pete didn't take it, he's out of his mind. Because even if you're using the 9 years, $214 as a benchmark, that's not $30 million a year. $30 million a year would be $270 for 9 years. Now, I know you want length. I understand that. You want the security. But you also have to be realistic. Every team that needed a first baseman made their move. Everyone. They made their move. So what Scott now has to do, there's two things he has to do. He has to play to the heartstrings of Steve Cohen and say your fan base loves him, and also you can't just get Soto and then leave him naked in the lineup without anybody else to help. Fair point. Or he's got to find one really dumb owner, some desperate owner that wants to make some kind of splash to tell their fan base, you know what? We want to win. We're trying. Maybe that's Artie Moreno. Artie Moreno has certainly gone that route before, and he's regretted every big contract he's ever signed. Josh Hamilton, regret. Albert Pujols, regret. Rendon, ultimate regret. None of his long-term contracts works out. None of them. Look at the Pujols contract. It was an albatross. They ended up getting rid of him. And then he had a renaissance when he returned to the Cardinals. You think that Artie Moreno is giving Pete Alonso a 9-year deal at the age of 30? Every long-term contract he's ever signed has been brutal. Sometimes you have to learn from your mistakes, right? And, dirty little secret. Prince Fielder was better than Pete Alonso. And that was a different time and a different place. Front offices are so savvy now that they put valuations on people and they put valuations on positions. They're not putting that kind of valuation on a first baseman. Jose Abreu signed a 3-year, $60 million deal with the Astros. They released him in the middle of the second year. So they made their move already to get a first baseman. The Yankees made their move to get a first base. Let me tell you a little secret, everybody. It was out there in the media. Now, the Yankees are considering Pete Alonso. They never considered Pete Alonso, ever. There was no way the Yankees were signing Pete Alonso, ever. Now, it behooves the people around Alonso to make people in Major League Baseball think that the Yankees were in on it. They were never in on it, ever. And they needed a first baseman. But they were never in on it. He didn't fit the profile. They want to keep first base open if and when it's time to move Aaron Judge to first base. So you're going to sign a long-term contract with Pete Alonso? That makes sense. And every team that wants a long-term first baseman, wouldn't you wait one more year and get Vlad Guerrero? Didn't that make more sense? Wouldn't that make more sense? So you see reports like this. You know, when I was single, I wanted to date Jennifer Aniston. No basis in reality. Scott Boras is using the Prince Fielder 9-year, $214 million contract as a comp. There's no basis in reality. If Scott can get Pete Alonso a 9-year deal, whatever the number is, he should be anointed the greatest agent in the history of professional sports. Every single player in Major League Baseball should hire him. If he could get Pete Alonso a 9-year contract. It's outrageous to even expect it. Well, football fans, buckle up. Because for the first time ever, we've got 5 straight days of playoff football in college and the pros. And FanDuel is celebrating with the great playoff payoff. That's a no-sweat, same-game parlay every day for all 5 days. With a no-sweat SGP, you can combine your bets from the same game for a chance at even bigger winnings. And if it doesn't hit, you'll get bonus bets back. So not only do we get to watch 5 straight days of playoff football, but that's also 5 chances to win big. Just visit FanDuel.com/K to be part of this epic run. That's FanDuel.com/K. It's the great playoff payoff, and it's only on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. 21 plus and physically present in New York. Opt-in required. Minimum 3-leg parlay required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Max refund $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369.
You know what's smart? Enjoying a fresh gourmet meal at home that you didn't have to cook. Meet Factor, your loophole in the laws of mealtime. Chef-crafted meals delivered with a tap, ready in just 2 minutes. You know what's even smarter? Treating yourself without cheating your goals. Factor is dietitian approved, chef prepared, and you plated. Pretty smart, huh? Refresh your routine and eat smart with Factor. Learn more at factormeals.com.
This is the Michael K. Show podcast.
I gotta get more K.
Listen live weekdays at 1 on 880 ESPN, the ESPN New York app, and your smart speaker.
Oh, yeah. Everybody was excited about this segment yesterday. So we said, oh, well, let's do it 2 days in a row. And I'm walking around. This is new for me. I'm walking around with this little notebook. I'm now that guy. And everything I see or everything that I hear, I just pull out a pen and write down something that I think would be interesting in a little quick hits. Now, those that didn't join us yesterday, what Hit and Run is, I used to do it when I had a column in the Daily News. Just little quick thoughts. Don't have to delve that deeply into it. Now, if it's something that interests you, you could certainly call in to comment. But here we go. So Luis Arraez is supposedly on the Yankees' radar. And it seemed like it was hot yesterday. Not as hot today. They don't seem like they're that close. But I would say this one thing. A lot of people like Arraez, and I like Arraez too. He's an average hitter in a sport that's kind of lost that art. You know, they don't care if you hit 220 as long as you hit your home runs and the strikeouts don't matter. Well, Arraez is a bat-to-ball guy. But one thing I would tell you, well, there's 2 things that concern me a little bit about Arraez when it comes to the Yankees. He's a bad defender. He's not even as good as Gleyber. And Gleyber was a minus defender, especially last year. Arraez would not be great at second base. And a left-handed singles hitter at Yankee Stadium sometimes plays against type. because a line drive to right field, the right fielder's playing shallow because it's so shallow in right field. A lot of those singles could be caught. So that's something to look out for, and that's something that you shouldn't sign up for immediately and say, oh, yeah, got to have a rise. I think if they get him, they can make it work because he's a brilliant tactician with the bat, but it's not a perfect fit. I'll say that. It's just not a perfect fit. This one will surprise you. If you've ever heard of Taylor Sheridan, he does a whole bunch of shows, and a lot of them are on Paramount Plus. You know, he's the genius behind Yellowstone, the Sylvester Stallone vehicle, Tulsa King, and Landman, which is the newest one, and has Billy Bob Thornton starring in it. I got to tell you all something. And believe me, I am telling you this, and I truly, truly think it's legitimate. Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, did a cameo where he's talking in a room, in a hospital room, to John Hamm's character, who's in a hospital bed, and Billy Bob Thornton sitting in a chair. And he gives this whole monologue. I think it would be about 4 minutes long, 5 minutes. I mean, any like established actor would have a hard time nailing this. Jerry Jones was so brilliant as an actor. I mean, he got himself to tear up at the end as well. And it is about growing old, and he's talking about growing old and making sure that you work with your children. You know, those are things that they can never take away. So maybe it really resonated with him and struck a chord with him. But if there was an Emmy Award or a Golden Globe that could be handed out for a cameo appearance, I'm telling everybody, if you get a chance today, go watch the clip. Not good, great. I mean, just absolutely chill-inducing how great he was as an actor. You're probably rolling your eyes and go, please, can't be that good. Yeah, it's that good. So on vacation, I read this book by the late Bill Zemi. Actually, he was writing it when he died, and then it was finished up by somebody he worked with, called Carson the Magnificent, about Johnny Carson. And there was something in it that was just absolutely amazing to me. You know, you all know the Tonight Show theme, right? Well, that was written by Paul Anka. When Johnny Carson got the Tonight Show, the band leader at the time was Skitch Henderson. And Johnny didn't really love Skitch Henderson, and Skitch Henderson really didn't love Johnny. Skitch Henderson was the band leader for Jack Parr, who did the Tonight Show before Johnny Carson. So Johnny Carson knew that there was this young upstart songwriter who was putting out hits, Paul Anka. And he asked Paul Anka to write a theme for his show. And just so that Skitch would not go nuts, Johnny said, I'll do the beginning of a drum beat, so I'll get like a writer's credit as well. So it looks like I wrote the song with you. Well, because he got a writer's credit on that song that was played for the 30 years that Johnny was the host of the Tonight Show, take a guess on how much money per year Paul Anka and Johnny Carson got for that song. All right, time's up. They both got $900,000 a year for 30 years for the Tonight Show theme. That amazing? That's on top of Johnny Carson's salary. That's why Johnny Carson was fabulously wealthy at the end. But at the beginning of the song, it's like a big drum beat. That's the only thing that Johnny Carson contributed to the song. And then Paul Anka did the rest, and Johnny got a writer's credit and got $900,000. How about smart athletes? Sometimes smart athletes are the rare ones now that know what to do with their money, and they're not spending all their money on bling and cars and stuff like that. So Austin Eckler of the Commanders, he's earned $30 million in his career. He doesn't own a home. He lives in a small apartment, and he drives a $40,000 Chrysler. You think he's going to have money when he retires? Yeah, I think he will. That's the smart way to go about it. The one thing that somebody once told me, when you get money, the last thing you should do is buy a new car. Because once that car hits the road, it leaves the showroom, it devalues in price that you'll never, ever, ever get back. Another hit and run. So we have congestion pricing going on in New York City. And there's two stories that hit now. So there's there's people that park on a garage on 60th Street. And I guess, or 61st Street, anything below 60th, you get charged $9. Anything above, you don't. But this garage that they park in empties out onto Fifth Avenue, and Fifth Avenue obviously goes south. So just by leaving the garage on 61st, they have to go south. And they have to pay the toll. They have to pay the congestion pricing. Just because of where the garage is located. Another one, funeral directors are planning to pass on the $9 congestion toll because even hearse carrying caskets are going to be charged this toll. So they're going to put the $9 congestion toll to grieving families. Good stuff. Good stuff, Kathy Hochul. Gerard Mayo gets fired. 1 year in. And I've always been, I would get into arguments with Don LaGreca about this. How do you fire somebody after 1 year? And Don would rightfully say, well, you know what? If you don't think he's the right person, then why do you compound the error by keeping him there? But in football, how do you institute what you want to do in 1 year? And if you're Robert Kraft, you look like an absolute stooge. Now, the things I read about Gerard Mayo, that he ingratiated himself with the Kraft family because he had a nickname for Robert Kraft ever since he was a player, and he's been an assistant under Bill Belichick. You fired the greatest coach in the history of professional sports for Gerard Mayo, and then you fire him after 1 year. That's not a Mayo problem. That's a Kraft problem. That's ineptitude of the front office. You had no clue that this guy would be in over his head? Now, I think the deeper thing in this is that he wants Mike Vrabel. But he could have had Mike Vrabel last year. He was fired last year. But he had to give the job to Gerard Mayo. How fair is it, or how unfair is it, to actually get fired after 1 year as an NFL coach? This is a reflection of Kraft. It doesn't make Mayo look bad. It makes Kraft look ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, sometimes there's a cold splash of water that hits your face that makes you realize where you stand. So on Saturday, I went to the Fordham St. Bonaventure game. And ever since I've graduated, every time I go to Rose Hill Gym, and I mean every time, the guys at FUV, the radio station where I actually refine my craft, they would ask me to be the halftime guest. Every time. And sometimes I didn't want to because I was there with all of my buddies from Fordham. So here we go. I figure I'm going to go. I went with Jack Curry and my buddy Joel Sherman, Mike Puma of the New York Post, Mike Vaccaro. And strangely, I sit down. Nobody from FUV comes up and asks me, hey, can you be the halftime guest? So I'm kind of pleasantly surprised. I'm going to get a chance to breathe and actually, shoot the crap with my friends. And then I find out yesterday, you know why they didn't ask me? Because Woj was there, Adrian Wojnarowski, because he's the GM of St. Bonaventure basketball. So now I know that I am less than Woj, which I always knew anyway, but even to my alma mater radio station, it hurts. It hurts. I don't like it. It really does stink. The Titans fired their GM, Rand Carthen. Rand Carthen was the GM brought by Mrs. Adams after Mike Vrabel wanted the assistant GM to be promoted to GM. She said no, she brought in Rand Carthen. Rand Carthen then plays a big role in hiring Brian Callahan, whose team went 3-14 this year. So they fire Carthen. Then they could have done the move that Mike Vrabel wanted and kept the great coach that he's everybody's coach, everybody's choice. Bad organizations are bad for a reason because they don't know what they're doing. And finally, I saw this in the Post. And really, you could tweet me at Real Michael K, or you can call in. I don't believe it. I wonder if you believe it. But if I read it in the Post, I believe it. nearly half of Americans carry spare underwear in case of an emergency. I don't. Do you know anybody that actually carries another pair of underwear in case they soil themselves? I mean, you got to have some. Now, there are some people with issues, and my heart goes out to them. But half of America does not have issues intestinal. So what exactly are you doing? Why are you carrying that extra pair of underwear? And I'm starting to think maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. Maybe I should have a couple of pairs of Fruit of the Loom in the car in case something happens. That shocked me. It really did. 1-800-919-3776. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Jimmy in Staten Island.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Good, Jim. What's up, man?
Congratulations on your solo career there, and I actually think I'm going to enjoy this a little bit more.
Oh, thank you.
First of all, that's nonsense about carrying underwear. I don't know a soul that does that.
Me neither.
Second of all, the scene with Jerry Jones had to be one of the best scenes I ever seen in my life for 4 minutes. And I actually do believe the reason why it was so good was he's talking about his own life. That's his life. And he was so sincere, it blew me away.
I'm glad you said that because people are thinking, okay, he's out of his mind. Jimmy, didn't you get emotional watching it? It was so good.
I couldn't believe that he was actually breaking down. I'm thinking like I'd be doing the same thing if I was a rich guy like that. I wanted to work with my family. I mean, the lines he had, the way he presented the lines, and it blew me away. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I'm glad you backed me up on that because it was amazing. Again, it's from the show Landman, the Taylor Sheridan vehicle on Paramount Plus. And when I watched it for the first time, I thought it was like, an internet thing where they splice stuff that Jerry Jones was talking about and, put it into a scene. But he was in the scene. That was his role. I can't emphasize enough how brilliant he was. And he might not be a good GM. And by the way, for you Cowboy fans, he said he's never given up the GM position of the Cowboys until he dies. So you could get that out of the way. He's not giving that up to anybody. And I don't blame him. Maybe he's not good at it. But if I owned a team, I'd want to run it. And of all the owners in professional sports, how many of them actually played the game at a high level? Jerry played the game at a high level in college. He did. So he knows a little bit about the game. And they always have a pretty good roster. So he's doing something right. But as an actor, off the charts. TJ in New York City. TJ.
Hey, Michael, first of all, I've seen all the Sheridan stuff, the prequels, except this episode. I'm going to check it.
Oh, you got to check it out.
I'm going to check it. The underwear thing, you alerted me to something. Maybe I need to pack some underwear. But listen, hey, listen, I want to tell you something. As a Jet fan, a diehard Jet fan, and speaking to Jet fans, I know the talk goes back and forth. What is the right play? What is the stable play? There is no play except Rex. If you're a diehard Jet fan, you know it. He understands the pulse of the upper deck Shea Stadium New York Jet fan. It is different. Forget the X's and O's. Dan Campbell goes for fourth and whatever because he's in the mind of his offensive line, and now they're on the hook to back him up. It's the same thing. I agree with him. He needs to bring in a staff, but let Rex, you know what? He stuck his mouth out there. I'm all for it. You know what? Bring Rex back. Every Jet fan you ask, let's roll it again. Run it back. Run it back.
Well, I understand what you're saying, TJ, and I think that one of the reasons that Jet fans feel that way because that's the last great memory they have. That's the last time they made the playoffs. They have the longest stretch of not making the playoffs in professional sports right now in the United States. But just because he can identify with the fans, that doesn't make him the right choice. It just doesn't. It doesn't make him the right choice because he knows what the guys in the upper deck at MetLife are thinking. You got to have a guy who's clued into today's game. And he's clued in. I mean, if you watch him on the NFL pregame show on ESPN, he's really good. So he knows what's happening in the sport, but he's a defensive-minded coach in an offensive-minded league. He just is. Now, you can say, well, so is Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell has Ben Johnson, though. Is Rex going to bring in this great offensive coordinator? And by the way, the thing with Ben Campbell that's interesting, with Dan Campbell, is he lets Ben Johnson cook. He's going to let him go for things. He's going to go on 4th and 6 or whatever the case may be, and I think he's dumb to do that sometimes. So he lets his offense breathe. Rex is a guy who's going to depend on winning with his defense, and he's going to run Breece Hall a lot. So if the Jets are going to score 21 points a game, really? Is that the way to win in this league right now? Because everything is against the defense. Everything is against the defense. So if, in fact, you have a great defensive coordinator, they're still going to give up a lot of points because all the rules are against them. Every rule is against them. Every rule. You got to think about that, too. Let's go to Glenn in Connecticut. Glenn.
Hey, Michael. How you doing? Appreciate you taking the call. Yeah. Wanted to go back into kind of the Yankees discussion here, and potentially I know they're looking to fill a hole at either second or third, and bring up a name that really hasn't been brought up much is Ha-Seong Kim. I think it'd be a potential fit there. Wanted to get your 2 cents on that. And instead of really kind of digging around for trading, maybe sign Kim to a 2 or 3 year deal and plug him in at second or third there.
Well, I don't think Kim is a great defender. All right, I give you that, Glenn. But they're right up against the top level tax, which they don't want to go over. So anybody they get, they're going to have to give up some salary in order to fit that underneath. And the second baseman, I think, is going to be Chisholm. And at this point, unless they get a real second baseman that can come cheap, Chisholm's going to go back to third. But if Chisholm plays second, then it might be a combination of DJ LeMahieu, Oswaldo Cabrera, Oswald Peraza. Now, that doesn't light your boat. It doesn't light my boat either. And I've said this on the Yankee Hot Stove on Yes as well. To me, this whole thing, well, we're going to go with that trio at third base and Chaz Chisholm is going to be at second, it has the whole Bubba Crosby feel to it. It has the kind of feel where, Bubba Crosby's going to be a center fielder. Until at the last minute they sign Johnny Damon. So I think there's still a move to be made, but I think a lot of moves that might be made are predicated on one thing, shedding salary. And the most likely way to shed salary for this Yankee team is trading Marcus Stroman. And I don't think there's a team out there, and it shows you what a bad signing it was. There's not a team out there that's going to pick up all $18 million. Not a team. So if the Yankees could somehow entice a team to take on, 11 of the 18 and the Yankees eat 7, then that gives them $11 million to play at the second base position or the third base position. But I said it at the time. I didn't understand the Stroman signing. I mean, that was their pivot after they missed out on the guy they wanted. So I just didn't think it was a good pivot. I think he's a tough, gritty competitor. But in this day and age in baseball, people are looking for velocity. He throws 88, 89 miles an hour. So if they cannot move him, then that's an indictment of signing him. And they better be careful, because if he ends up having to pitch, maybe 25 starts this year. Right now he's the 6th starter. But if he makes 25 starts this year, he's going to go over 140 innings. And if he goes over 140 innings, you know what that means? Then they have a third year they have to deal with, because that option kicks in. When Brian did it, I didn't understand it. He had a good first half of the season, and then his stuff flattened out, and he struggled. Never gave up. He's a tough guy. When you look at Marcus Stroman and you realize this guy's a major league pitcher, you realize how tough he is. But his stuff is short. His stuff is just not at major league dominant level or even major league average level, I don't think. So if they're trying to trade him and they can't, then that's further proof that it was a bad signing. Let's go to Joe in West Harrison. Joe, what's up?
Mike, long time. How's everything? Happy New Year, you and your family, buddy. How's everything?
Everything's good, and Happy New Year to you.
Good. Maybe the reason why so many Americans are bringing an extra pair of underwear is maybe they're all full of poo. Sorry, but I'll be here all week, Mike.
I love it.
Anyway, so listen, getting to the Jet thing and Rex. I would bring Rex back as a GM, a consultant. People forget that he won with the former general manager Mangini's players. I mean, and his arrogance outdoes his actual talent. I mean, the whole thing with the I don't kiss the ring of Belichick. I mean, come on. Why don't you win some? And, yes, he did bring us to playoffs. Well, one, I believe, was the lucky one when Manning didn't play. But regardless, I don't want him. I wanted Vrabel. Aaron Glenn would be on my short list. But, I think we need, like everybody's been saying, we need to change the culture. And no matter if it's an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator or whatever, you got to bring that person in, and they have to make the right choice at offensive coordinator.
One thing, you did say something that does resonate with me. Change the culture. Rex would change the culture. He'd have the players believe. Players love him. He's like a players type of coach, but he can also discipline. He's not going to give in to them. And he's going to make the fan base believe. He is a salesman. And I've said from the very beginning, I mean, he's been like politicking for this job for a couple of months now, ever since Saleh got fired. And I think if he doesn't get it, it's kind of a bad look. Tessa from West Caldwell yesterday called, he's looking really thirsty. I mean, he really wants this gig. Let's go to Ryan in Georgia. Ryan.
What's going on, Michael? First of all, I'm one of those guys that pack an extra pair of underwear in my car.
Why? Tell me why. I want to know.
Listen, you may have to go to the bathroom. You may not make it. You may have an accident, Michael. I'm just saying, at least you got a clean pair of underwear just in case that accident happens. That's all I'm saying. You just never know. You never know, all right? But what I wanted to ask you for real, like, how do you even feel about Rex getting an interview without a GM in place?
Well, I think it's weird. I believe that a lot of coaches, they interviewed Vrabel as well. So that's something that you're going to have to look at too. So I think it's better to do the GM and have the GM pick the coach. But the Jets have a weird structure where the coach reports to Woody, and the GM reports to Woody, and the coach doesn't report. So I think that's part of the problem too. I agree with you. In a perfect world, I think the GM is hired first, and then he helps hire the coach. Because if you saddle a GM with a coach that he's not comfortable with, it doesn't make sense. But maybe they feel that the coaches are going to go first, and they want to get their choice, and then they'll deal with the GM, and the GM will be hired if, in fact, they feel good about working with said coach that, in fact, was hired. But it's odd. It's an odd way to go about it. 1-800-919-3776. It's the K Show. When we come back, it's Debunk the Junk, another new segment on the show where we actually tackle some of the things that are actually false on social media. It's K and U right here on 880 ESPN.
What makes a great pair of glasses? At Warby Parker, it's all the invisible extras without the extra cost. Their designer quality frames start at $95, including prescription lenses, plus scratch-resistant, smudge-resistant, and anti-reflective coatings, and UV protection, and free adjustments for life. To find your next pair of glasses, sunglasses, or contact lenses, or to find the Warby Parker store nearest you, head over to warbyparker.com. That's warbyparker.com.
Harry Douglas here, and if you're constantly on the go like I am, then earbuds are a priority. That's why you need Technique's new noise-canceling AZ80s. Like you, these buds work as hard as they play. You'll get Technique's legendary high-res audio, along with state-of-the-art noise cancellation, so you can stay in your zone. Visit us.techniques.com/sports to shop for AZ80s now. That's us.technics.com/sports.
Grainger knows space at your facility is limited. As a maintenance specialist, you only have so many spots for backup products in your inventory roster, which means space on your bench comes at a premium. Well, when it comes to breadth and depth, Grainger's got you covered. They've got over 1 million industrial-grade products. Plus, fast delivery helps reduce the inventory you need to keep on hand, freeing up space and capital while giving your operation a winning edge. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by a local branch.
Thanks for listening to the Michael K. Show podcast.
He's been here a long time, and he's going to be here even longer.
Catch the show on demand whenever you want. Just subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, we're going to do this every now and then because I think it's going to be fun to debunk the junk. Because I'm one of the people that believe, and people fight me on it all the time, why do you give air to this? But when people put something out into the universe, and it's not debunked, then it almost becomes accepted that it's true. And I don't want that happening on my watch, or especially about me. And I've been called thin-skinned about it. It's not something about being insulted or anything like that. The people put stuff into the air that have no valid truth to it. And if you don't come back at it, the people just assume it must be true because, and I don't answer people back on social media anymore. I used to, but that would get me in trouble. But now I could do it on the show, and you can always call and debunk my debunking. You know the number, 1-800-919-3776. But here we go. This is from yesterday. And, one of these people, this is on X, is a listener to the show. And I think a pretty good guy. And he writes, Kay said the reason for the move had zero to do with getting away from Don and Peter. Nonsense. It had some to do with it, in addition to working less and earlier. Then he's answered by somebody else that said, I think so too, or suspect. The whole thing is a bit strange, and how sudden it happened. I think there was more going on behind the scenes, but maybe we'll find out one day. And then the first guy answered correct, and I don't blame him. It had run its course, and in my opinion, Kay was done with some of the nonsense those two pulled, especially since 2020. Guys, thank you for even, wondering about why I made this move to do this 2-hour show from 1 to 3. I love Don and Peter. Well, I love Don. I like Peter. But, I was with Don for 22 years. I was with Peter for 9 of those 22. They are like family to me. Truly, they are like family to me. And me doing an afternoon drive show and doing the Yankees had just run its course for me physically. And I told the powers that be that at the end of my contract would end it on, it was actually the day after the holiday party. That was it. I could not do this anymore. I just physically and mentally couldn't do it. I'm going to be 64 on February 2nd. Now, that's not ancient. But when I started this gig, I was 42 years old, 41 years old. It's a lot younger. Anybody that's my age, they realize how different you feel at 63 than you do at 41. So my point is, don't try to find something, everybody, that's not there. There's no rift between me and Don and Peter. Yesterday, I was with them. I talked with them. Peter actually brought me cookies before he did the show with Alan and Don. Believe me, it had nothing to do with them. If I was 45 years old and it was the same circumstance, you know what? I'd be doing the afternoon drive show. Didn't want to get away with them. Didn't want to get away from them. This was about me. This was selfishly me. And when I told the bosses I couldn't do this anymore, I said, well, is there anything that we could do to make you stay in one shape or form, to keep you on the station? I said, I don't know. And they said, how about a shorter show earlier so you'd have time to recover and then do the Yankees? And I said, well, that would be cool. And they came back with how does 1 to 3 work? Now, to be totally honest, I would have preferred noon to 2, but I wasn't going to be a jerk about it. They made this concession for me and offered me a great contract, and 1 to 3 works. And at the end of the show, I'll jump in the car and I'll drive to the stadium. I'll be there in plenty of time for Boone's press conference. That's why it happened. There's no rift between me and Don and Peter. That's just silly. It's just putting stuff out there that's not true. It's not true. Now, one other piece of junk I want to debunk. So, I'm reading yesterday on X where a guy says he left the afternoon show because they were getting no ratings. He's a failure. He's never, ever beaten FAN in any kind of way. And that's why, I'm not even going to give this clown name credit. But I did want to address it because it seems some people said that. Number one, if I failed an afternoon drive, why would they want to keep me in any kind of day part? Why? Why would they offer me this role? If I was a failure, why would they offer me this role? So that's a lie. Secondly, we failed in the ratings. We don't get ratings. We don't pay Arbitron. You have no idea what our ratings are. So how would you know we failed in the ratings? What are you, some kind of sensei? And thirdly, and this is the most important thing, we never beat FAN. Me, Don, Peter and I, we beat Francesa, beat him, and then he retired. Beat him. We beat every show that they ever put against us. Evan and Joe, Maggie, Bart, and Carlin, beat them. We even beat Carton and Evan in the second book that they had. And then COVID hit, 2020 hit, and we didn't beat them after that. I'll admit it. They kicked our butt. But to say that they never beat anybody on FAN, you're an idiot to think that. And you're also ill-informed and have no idea what you're talking about. Never beat them. We beat probably one of the greatest talk show hosts in the history of this medium. Beat him. He retired after we beat him. And before that, you could actually make the argument we beat him as well. But there were these little things that people, well, they didn't count streaming, whatever the case may be. For 2 years, we were neck and neck with them. And then we did actually convincingly beat them. So for those that think, well, they never beat FAN, you're clueless, you're dumb, and I don't respect you, and you smell. 1-800-919-3776. Let's go to a gentleman from Verona. His name is Phil. What's up, Phil?
How you doing?
Good. How are you, Phil?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
And thank you for taking my call.
Well, thank you for
This is a
making it.
special day.
What was that, bud?
I said this is a special day.
Why is that?
Now I'm on the radio.
There you go. Well, what do you got, Phil?
I'm talking about the three things.
Okay.
One is that I'm a Jet fan, and I watched the Jets win back in '69. So I'm old.
Okay.
Second thing is taking a piss is one of the things I've done on myself because I had a weak bladder. And so I had extra underwear and extra pants. So I understand that. But the bladder's okay now. And so I don't have to carry around the extra underwear and pants. Now, the other thing is, you sound great. You really do.
Thank you. Well, the interesting thing, I read the thing from the Post, if you just tuned in, that they said that about 50% of Americans carry an extra pair of underwear with them in case of an accident. And I understand, like Phil said, he had some kind of bladder problem. Yeah, that makes sense. Of course, you carry an extra pair of underwear. But 50% of Americans don't have that problem. It's amazing the things you do and the things you say on a radio show and the thing that gets traction. That's what they're talking about on social media right now, the underwear, the things like that. And now I'm actually of the opinion that I should carry an extra pair. Now, there are 3 people that work on this show on any given day. So that would mean that at least one of us, 1.5 of us, carries an extra pair of underwear if you believe that story. All 3 of us don't. When Peter and Don worked with me, none of us, as far as I know, carried an extra pair of underwear. So I want to know who these 50% are and why do they do it? It makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me. But now I'm going to start doing it because if 50% of this country does it, I want to do it too. Because this is a polarized country right now. And I want to touch both sides. I don't just want to touch the people that don't carry extra underwear. I want to touch the people that do. I want to be on their vibe. So starting today, after the show, I'm going to go out and do an errand, and I'm going to put an extra pair of underwear in the glove compartment. Yeah. If you take anything out of the show today, the Chris Russo interview, whatever, the hit and run, debunk the junk, take the fact that there will be a pair of Shinesty underwear in the glove compartment moving forward. So if, God forbid, I ever have, let's really go to brass tacks here. Can we talk frankly? If you have a serious accident, right? Think about it. I'm not talking about urine. If you have a serious accident, an extra pair of underwear is not going to do the trick. Because it's going to get on your pants too. You're going to have an extra pair of pants. So do we have to have an extra outfit in the trunk? Think about that, because if you have a real accident, changing your underwear is not changing the situation. Just not. Just saying. Just saying. Hey, maybe the off season, but every season is Bigelow tea season. You know, I'm picky about what I drink. I always tell you that, especially on days I have a show. Now, one of the first things I do each day is reach for a mug full of Bigelow tea. I love the different flavor options, and it's perfect for someone who makes his living behind a microphone. Want to know what keeps me going? Look no further than my cup of Bigelow tea next to me in the studio. So grab a mug full of your favorite Bigelow tea and tea proudly. Bigelow tea, the official hot tea of the New York Yankees.
Girl, you have got to try this Laneige lip mask. Trust me, my lips needed that love. Love these vanilla vibes from Kayali. That top note is just so smooth.
Smooth and stunning. That's what you get with this K18 hair mask.
Those brands everybody's talking about, they're at Sephora. Discover the hype with the hottest names in beauty, including Laneige, Kayali, K18, and Rare Beauty. Only at Sephora.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Smith's for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Smith's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Thanks for listening to the Michael K. Show podcast.
He's been here a long time, and he's going to be here even longer.
Catch the show on demand whenever you want. Just subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, I know there's different listeners every single day, and we appreciate each and every one of them. And a person, I don't know if it's a woman or a man, that has listened for a long time under the heading of TMKS Burner, just heard what I said about, why I have this show and left the afternoon show. And he writes, Real Michael K., if Don and Peter are like family, why stop the NFL picks when it's getting good? You're still hosting at the same station. I think your decision to stop making picks is a larger issue. You'll never talk to Don or Peter outside of work ever again. Well, that's not true. I mean, I was talking to Peter the other day on Sunday. I always talk to Don. And he also goes on to say, I don't talk to RJ and Gunling. Talk to Gunling all the time. I'm mad at RJ for leaving our show, so I haven't had much of an opportunity to, find forgiveness. And TMKS Burner, I guess you weren't listening yesterday. I wanted to continue to picks. It was the Pinhead Suits who said, no, it's a new show. We don't need you making picks and continuing that segment. It was not me. I wanted to make those picks. The Pinhead Suits said no. So if you want to call up Don or Peter, Don knows the real story. Peter does as well. I showed them the text thread with the Pinhead Suit where he said, stop making picks. I love the whole pick segment. I would have gladly dressed up in a clown suit. I wouldn't have lost anyway. Peter would have. Don was way ahead. So that's why the pick segment stopped, not because of me being a coward. So, know your stuff before you come after the king. And I'm not the king, but it's just an expression. I wonder sometimes why GMs give in to unhappy players. So Jimmy Butler's unhappy. He can't find his joy playing in Miami. And it looks like the Heat are going to trade him. Never. If I was a GM, that's why I couldn't be a GM, because I'd be vindictive. You have a contract and you can't find the joy playing for me? All right, then sit on the bench or sit at home and rot. You'll never step on an NBA court again. Ever. Ever. I'm not going to make things easy on you. Now, the counter argument is, well, maybe they trade Jimmy Butler and get somebody that could help them. We'll see. But I think if most GMs stopped giving in to recalcitrant players, then there wouldn't be those that demanded trades. I was a firm believer that Sean Marks should have never given in to Kevin Durant. Ever. No, you're playing here. We fired a coach for you. We reconfigured everything here for you. You're staying. And if you don't play, then you know what? Then you don't play. Then your career is over. Same thing with Tyreek Hill. So after Sunday's game, he said, he wanted to be out of Miami. And I give Miami a little credit because their GM, Chris Greer, and their head coach, Mike McDaniel, met with Hill. And he didn't accept he didn't demand a trade to them. He didn't walk back his comments, though. And he also had pulled himself out of Sunday's loss to the Jets. And McDaniel said he met with Hill for an hour on Monday, made it clear that it's not acceptable to leave the game and won't be tolerated in the future. And he said that Hill was accountable in the meeting. McDaniel said there's nothing necessary to fix with Hill, but the meeting was important to clear the air. That's the way to do it. Sit him down and go, there's no chance you're getting traded. I thought Dan Orlovsky today had the greatest line. Tyreek Hill left a winner in the Kansas City Chiefs. An all-time great team with a quarterback that would have put up numbers with him that might never be reached because he wanted more money that the Chiefs probably couldn't give him with all the stars on their team. So you can't leave a winner to get more money somewhere else. And then once you get the money, complain that you're not with a winner. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. You got to be accountable for your decisions. So now the Dolphins don't win enough for him, and he wants out. And again, as I said with Pat Riley, you don't like it here? Then don't play NFL football. You don't like it here? Then don't play NBA basketball. Now, this is really strange, too. You got two guys that play in South Beach, essentially. They want out, where there's no taxes, the weather is beautiful, the scenery is great. That's a little odd. Maybe more of a reflection on those guys. But Hill, you leave the Chiefs, you leave Super Bowls on the table. You get your money with the Dolphins, and now you want to leave them. It might be a you problem. Let's go to Tino and Dutchess. Tino.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Tino?
Good. So I'm a big Yankee fan, but I'm not going to touch nothing about that. We'll see what happens in April if the cards lay where they may.
Okay.
I just want to thank you because me and my wife last night looking for a movie to watch, and I said, hey, why don't we put Carry On? She goes, I heard bad reviews about that. I said, nah, I heard it got good reviews. So we started watching it, and she loved it. So I want to call you up and just thank you.
Well, thank you, Tino. And it's funny you brought it up, and I'm glad you did, because I said yesterday, for those that didn't listen, that the movie Carry On Netflix is really like a guilt-free, joyful watch. In no way, shape, or form is it a documentary. It's not based in reality. But for 2 hours, it's going to entertain you. It's a Jason Bateman vehicle. And somebody on X says, no, you're wrong about Carry On. It does, the protagonist turned into Jack Ryan. I didn't say that it was a true story. And also, how am I wrong about my opinion thinking it's good? You could say I disagree with you and I think Carry On's not good. Okay. But don't say I'm wrong. You can't say my opinion is wrong. An opinion is not wrong. Don LaGreca told me that. An opinion is an opinion. I never said Carry On was Casablanca. I never said it was on the Sci-Fi Channel or National Geographic. It's not a true story. Not based in any reality. But it's escapism at its finest. It's a well-done movie. You're at the edge of your seat. It's really, really, really good. Let's go to Paul in Staten Island. Paulie.
Hey, Michael, congratulations on your new show.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
You know me, but I just wanted to make a comment on the underwear. I was head trader on Wall Street. I always had a 3-pack in my desk.
Why? Tell me why.
When I bought a suit, I always had 2 pairs of pants ordered.
Oh, but why did you have the 3-pack?
3-pack just in case you had like too many tap beers the night before, But in any event, you know me from the last show. There was a discussion about going to prom.
Yeah.
And you went to Bronx High.
Right.
Right. And I called in. I said I went to Brooklyn Tech.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if they have a prom.
Yeah.
You know,
I didn't think
you
they had a
remember
Bronx
that call?
Science. Yeah, I remember that conversation, and I didn't know if they had a Bronx Science,
grade
but somebody
in
told me
grammar
they did.
school. Yes. And I also called in when Peter Rosenberg, right?
Mm-hmm.
He set up a dinner with wrestlers and everything. He picked the venue and everything else, and he asked for credit cards from the people. He set it all up, and I called in. I said, "How could he's a small potato guy," and he insulted me by calling it's anti-Semitic. And both you and Don said that's a stretch. And he said, "Where did it?" And I don't know if it was you or Don said, "Where does that come from?"
Well, I mean, the thing with Peter, he has alligator arms. You know, he's a little cheap, and I understand that. But if you put together a dinner, you have to pay for everybody. If you invite everybody, well, unless it's like everybody, well, we're getting together, and then you throw your credit cards in together and you split it. But if you're the one putting it together and inviting everybody, I think you almost have an obligation to, hey, this is on me, baby. And Peter makes big bucks. Maybe they'll talk about this coming up. The Don, Hahn, and Rosenberg vehicle. It's off to rave reviews. The first day, people are talking about it. I listened on my ride home. They're so good. They're so great. It's like I never existed. It's like I never took place. It's like I'm not even missed. And it hurts me a little bit, but I understand. It's just been seamless how good they are. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned tomorrow. We have a big show. We have Mike Lupica on with us, and we have Mike Breen on with us as well. So it's going to be an unbelievable show from 1 to 3. Coming up, Don, Hahn, and Rosenberg. And in the words of Billy Joel, life is a series of hellos and goodbyes. I'm afraid it's time for goodbye again. See everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks for listening to the Michael K. Show podcast.
You know what? Check yourself.
Hear more from Michael K. weekdays at 1 on 880 ESPN.
Suck it up and like it.
The ESPN New York app and your smart speakers.